Hello, I'm Huamin Chang. I'm sorry that I couldn't present this paper in person. Hope that you can still get the main idea of this paper through the recorded video. The title of this paper is Experience the World with Archetypal Symbols, a New Form of Aesthetics. In this paper, we're going to introduce a theoretical framework of human experience, and we will describe how this framework can be useful for designing new aesthetic experience in an interactive environment. We started with the behaviorist point of view towards human experience. Traditionally, behaviorists consider human beings as a kind of machine. So the physical environment around people can be considered as the input to this machine, and human experience turns out to be the output. For example, let's say a person sees a flower and he probably feels happy about it. In this example, the flower is a kind of input, and thus the happiness turns out to be the output. It seems pretty reasonable in some way, but humans are way more complex than this assumption. Continue with this example. There could be also another person also sees this flower, but this person is not interested in flowers, so he just feels bored. If we consider humans as identical biological machines, this cannot happen because all human beings should feel the same toward the same input. It turns out that this framework cannot explain why people have different feelings toward the same object. Some people feel happy about flower, but some people might have other feelings. It appears that people do not directly react to the physical environment. Psychologists provide another explanation. According to the appraisal theory of emotion, people do not have feelings toward the physical environment. Instead, they first generate an interpretation of the environment, and then they evaluate this interpretation to generate their emotions. That is, because people have different interpretations about the same thing, it is reasonable that they will have different feelings and thoughts toward it. This theory seems to solve the problem of behaviorists. The process of interpretation turns out to be very important and interesting. However, the current state of psychology doesn't really explain further about it. Luckily, researchers from other fields also encounter this question and provide some other explanation to fill this gap. Sociologists propose the theory of symbolic interactionism. This theory relies on the assumption that all kinds of human interaction are based on encoding and decoding symbolic meanings. While people are interacting with each other and the physical world, they are also acquiring the knowledge for interpreting the world. Through constantly interacting with the world and other people, human beings more or less will build a kind of shared knowledge about the physical world. Continue with the flower example. This flower is merely an ontologically objective plant. It is because that people gradually came to the consensus to embed special symbolic meanings onto this plant. In the end, people interpret this plant as flowers, which is more valuable than grass or some other kind of plants. Combining these theories, we provide a new framework. We assume that humans perceive and understand the world through symbols. When people are actively perceiving this objective world, symbolic meanings emerge during the process of cognition. Based on the results of cognitive process, people build up a subjective world in their mind. By evaluating this subjective world, human experience then can be generated. We will explain the interpreting part first and then elaborate how human experience is generated later. The phenomenology of perception is a very popular philosophical theory that is adopted by cognitive scientists and also psychologists. This theory is proposed by Merleau-Ponty. He argues that human beings build the subjective world by actively living in the objective world. But we need to notice that these two worlds cannot be separated. There is a fine layer that connects these two worlds, which is perception. That is, human beings can only interact with the objective world with their perception. So the perception is prior to any other psychological phenomena. Even if we can construct a virtual world in our mind through imagination, we still rely on the perception we have as the fundamental premise. Based on this theory, we further propose that the symbolic meaning emerges within this layer. That is, if we consider perception as a channel, then the symbols turns out to be the media that flow through it to deliver meanings. By interpreting these symbolic meanings, a person can therefore build up his subjective world. Interpreting symbolic meanings occurs in the cognitive process. Psychologists claim that people share a kind of knowledge that allows them to generate interpretation about the objective world. This knowledge plays the key role in extracting symbolic meanings out of the perceptual qualities delivered through their perceptions. It turns out that knowledge can be broken down to several levels, including personal, social, cultural, global, and also universal. We know that personal knowledge is deeply influenced by the society we live in and also the culture we live in. We can also see the global trend keeps changing people's lives over time. But it is more interesting to ask, is there any knowledge that is universal across time and culture? Psychologist Carl Jung proposed a model of human mind, which is called the theory of collective unconsciousness. This model can actually be matched to our framework of human experience. This diagram is a metaphorical mapping that explains Jung's model and the different levels of knowledge. Personal knowledge defines our ego. The social, cultural, and global knowledge define our personal unconsciousness. At the deepest level, the universal knowledge is connected to the collective unconsciousness, which is considered to be the basis of all kinds of human experiences. The collective unconsciousness is composed of many archetypes. Jung claims that archetypes are the fundamental knowledge that is universal to all human beings, which can be manifest as symbols in different cultures all over the world. Since the theory was proposed, archetypal symbolism becomes a discipline that aims at investigating symbolic meanings that are universal across time and culture. It turns out to be a key resource for designing experience through symbolic meanings of the physical environment. Next, we are going to talk about the second part, how human experience is formed. In general, human experience is composed of emotions and memories. Both emotions and memories need triggers. Emotion elicitation requires stimuli, and memory recollection needs cues. The incoming symbols turns out to be both stimuli and cues that trigger the process of human experience. Concretely, we can illustrate the emergence of human experience in this diagram. The physical attributes of objective world is perceived and interpreted by our knowledge of cognition, and then becomes symbols in the subjective world. These symbols elicit emotions and cue old memories. Therefore, new experience aggregate and emerges in the subjective world. Finally, we propose to apply our framework to design new products that can communicate with people in a symbolic way. So we propose that there are different levels of knowledge. Designers should also take into account the universal level, archetypal symbolism. There's also a new kind of human-object interaction, which is called mindful interaction. This interaction aims at guiding the user to reflect the implicit knowledge that they utilize while interacting with the product. It would be promising to design products that stimulate users to reconsider the symbolic meaning of the interaction that they are engaged in. Thanks for your attention. If you have any questions or comments, please contact me through email. Thank you.